Absolutely. So it's a great point that we can't just decide that a worldview is false because it makes us uncomfortable or it doesn't fit with our social norms.
Hmm.
And as you've just shared, you love to point people to the evidence of Christianity and help make this case for the truthfulness of the gospel. Really,
Hmm.
how else might we respond to the objection that Christianity isn't worth considering
Hmm.
because of things like sexual immorality?
Hmm. Yeah, well, we need to look at the Christian scriptures and see what Christianity actually teaches, because as we both mentioned earlier, this objection to Christianity from the place of, well, it's sexually immoral or whatever, it's Christian women are immoral. It just does not fit with what Christianity actually teaches. So I like to tell people, and if possible, to get them to look at the scriptures with me, though sometimes that can be a bigger challenge, and see what it says. And the fact is, the Christian scriptures teach that women are to dress modestly.
Yeah.
Our beauty is to come from our inward character, not from our outward appearance. We see that in verses like 1 Timothy 2. I think it's verses 9 and 10. It says, "I want women to dress modestly with decency and propriety." Uh, we see that in 1 Peter 3. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, but from your inner self. And these passages, when you look them up, you'll see examples of what not to do, like braided hair, or gold, or pearls, or expensive clothes, or things like that. And the point is not so much that these things uh, are signs of immodesty, because I mean, in our culture today, wearing pearls is not a sign of immodesty. Um, you're more likely to see pearls on a fully covered older woman than
Right.
on someone who is trying to gain attention with their look, with their lack of clothing, or that sort of thing. But the enduring principle here is to be modest. That may look a little different. It does look different in different cultures, but it's important that our dress communicate to others our heart, our intention. Um, Although, as I said before, there are some things that are never modest. I don't wear bikinis anymore. I encourage my the young women I mentor not to as well. Um, but we do see that Christianity calls for modesty. We can have
Yeah.
discussions about what that means, but we are called to modesty. Sexual immorality has absolutely no place in Christianity. The Christian scriptures teach very clearly and repeatedly that sexual immorality is wrong. Uh, so we see that from Mark, who's recording the testimony of Peter. He talks about sexual immorality being evil. We see that from the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 6. We see that in Ephesians 5. Also from Paul, we see that from Jude, the brother of James and Jesus. We see that in John, from John, rather. And so it's really it's all throughout the
Yeah.
scriptures, and in the Old Testament as well. Those are just examples from the New Testament, but it is the consistent command for Christians that there is no place for sexual immorality for any type of sex other than one man and one woman in a committed marriage for life. And so we also see that the things like vulgar talk has no place in Christianity. Uh, Ephesians 4:29 says, "Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs." And uh, Ephesians also talks about, "Let there be no obscenity, no foolish talk, no coarse joking, nothing that's out of place, but let thanksgiving come from your mouths." What we say is supposed to be worthy of respect, um, and we're to encourage people. We're not to be malicious in our speech. And so all of these different accusations, if Muslims have specific objections outside of those kind of three big areas of speech, attire, and sexuality, we could talk about that, but I would say let's go to the Christian scriptures and see what they actually teach, because this is based on a misunderstanding.
Yeah, and there's so many misunderstandings.
Right.
The Quran consistently misrepresents biblical faith, especially in regard to the gospel.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Of course, this leads Muslims to believe that the Bible's been corrupted, even though that's not even supported by the Quran. So there's just so many misunderstandings. And again, I'm an evangelist. I want to share the gospel with them, and as you said, I want to show them what the Bible actually teaches. Mm-hmm. And I think everything that we're talking about here it's just so important that we're able to recognize these spiritual barriers, is what I call them. Mm-hmm. Dr. David Geisler has a great book called Conversational Evangelism. I don't know if you've read it, but
no, not yet.
Highly recommend it. He talks about the different spiritual barriers that people have, and he talks about intellectual barriers, and I think that's what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. Today is they have misunderstood what Christianity teaches and what it stands for. Mm-hmm. And so they have this intellectual barrier, and we need to be able to recognize that when we're having these conversations with them. They may have an emotional barrier. Perhaps they've been, hurt by a Christian, or they've been offended in some way. Mm-hmm. So, all of these, or these two that I've mentioned, they require different responses from us, I think.
Right.
And of course, a lot of people, including Muslims, they just don't want to believe. They have a volitional barrier.
Right. And they have a lot to lose by leaving Islam. So we need to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, great point.
Right.